This Kourting Happiness episode is sponsored by Finding Happiness After Loss. It's an online course fueled by positive psychology. It will help you with grieving the loss of a loved one, relationship, job, and even diminishing health. If you're suffering with loss and searching for comfort and connection, this course will help you understand resilient grieving, the science of forgiveness and gratitude. Learn more by visiting drkortnialston.com, and you'll find it on the top of our homepage. That's drkortnialston.com. Now, let's get started with the podcast. Welcome to the Kourting Happiness podcast. This is a space where self-care becomes part of your day. A space where you learn evidence-based strategies to help your life, share it with those you love, and cultivate well-being at work. I'm your host, Dr. Kortni Alston. I'm a former news director, television reporter turned happiness scholar, TEDx speaker, and transformational trainer. I also understand hardships. While working my dream job in television, I lived a nightmare suddenly becoming a young widow after 86 days of marriage. I became committed to learning more about resilience, healing, and happiness. This is how I discovered my area of research, which is positive psychology. Now I'm living my calling of training individuals and organizations on happiness. And my new chapter begins with being happily engaged. The Kourting and Kourting Happiness is about a true courtship. I like to say commitment with happiness. The K in Kourting stands for the vulnerability of sharing my story, inspirational interviews with phenomenal people, the infusion of positive psychology, and so much more. You'll learn how to commit to your well-being one episode at a time. I hope you subscribe and share. So, are you ready? Let's get started. Welcome to episode 55. I'm Dr. Kortni Alston. Thank you so much for listening. I am so happy that you're here. I have a couple of quick questions for you. Have you often thought about creating a career with no limits? How about working in a leadership role for an organization, having your own company, or even obtaining a doctorate or an advanced degree of any kind, or maybe just continuing levels of your education? Did I mention doing all of these things at the same time? Well, I have a person that has done that and more. She is the perfect guest that will empower you to transform your life and focus on what she likes to call soul work. Dr. Sonya McCoy-Wilson joins the Kourting Happiness studio. She is a dean of arts and sciences, executive coach, and consultant. She's a scholar of learning, leadership, organizational development, as well as English and literature. On top of that, she has published scholarly articles in scientific journals to short stories appearing in various publications. And as you can see, she is brilliant and boundless. She shares her journey into academia with us, as well as how her work helps to fulfill her full potential. And she will also teach you how to create a career that is wide open to unlimited possibilities. So, are you ready? Let's dive in. Dr. McCoy-Wilson, I want to thank you so much for being with us today. I am so super excited as it relates to this conversation. Dr. McCoy-Wilson and I met on in a PhD or a doctoral Facebook group. And when she responded to this post as it relates to career and how to leverage your doctorate, and most of us think about leveraging it in regards to possibly going into a faculty position or, there's certain dynamics as it relates to academia. But I love the fact that she was without any limits as it relates to her response. And I said, I got to get her on the podcast. So I'm so super excited that you are here. So let's talk a little bit more about all things you and things that really speaks to you, because you are a dean, you're an executive coach, you do speaking engagements, you share information in regards to your research, you have a powerful research. Before we start talking about all those different roles, I'm curious and to find out what meaningful work means to you that's without limits.
Well, first, I like to say the pleasure is all mine, Dr. Kortni, for you having me here today. I love to do what I do. And so these kinds of talks are just an extension of who I am, all the different women that I am.
I like that, all the different women that you are.
Yeah. And so repeat your first question because I got off on that tangent.
No, you know what's so interesting? As soon as Dr. McCoy-Wilson and I connected in this, I like to leverage Zoom as it relates to my interviews. I knew we were going to have a good conversation. And
yes.
And so I'm so curious because you, as you mentioned, so many different women, right? In regards to all the roles you play. What does meaningful work mean to you without limits? I'm so curious what it means as it relates to how do you define the meaning, in terms of meaningful work that's, purpose driven to you, as well as the fact that there's no limits to it as well.
Yeah. So I had a lot of time to think about that. It really was my doctorate, my doctoral pursuit that caused me to think about my purpose more deeply. And so we can talk about why I chose the doctorate I chose a little later, but I'll dig right into what I consider meaningful work and why I consider it that way. I call this soul work. Doing work that represents your purpose, and my purpose is change and making the world a better place than it was when I left it. And so doing work that serves the greatest good for the greatest amount of people and also makes me happy. And so that's what meaningful work is to me. And because I chose people and education, I chose the people who need that work the most. So I choose to serve the folks that have been historically neglected, historically omitted, historically underrepresented, the marginalized many in this country. And so I chose them almost 15 years ago now, and I can't break away from that kind of community. I can't see myself at an institution that's not a predominantly Black institution or an HBCU or a minority serving institution. I can't see myself at those other places because I feel like those other people have been privileged, and the systems in the country were designed to meet their needs. But the other groups, the marginalized groups, not so much. And so it gives me great joy every day to do my part to end generational poverty, generational undereducatedness, and generational marginalization, all of that comes with it. And so all of the things that I've chosen, all of the career choices and multiple projects and endeavors that I've chosen have been to serve that end.
And it's interesting because when you're talking about your doctorate and then looking at it in terms of your area research, right, in terms of the people that you wish to support, to serve, right? And so I'm very curious in regards to because I can imagine there's a listener out there who might be thinking about, hey, I want to get a doctorate. I want to pursue really being immersed in scholarship and what that looks like. How did you go about making the decision to obtain your doctorate? Because as a person who has a PhD, who's one of 9 in my family that are doctors, a couple of them are medical doctors, and the rest of us have PhDs. And as you were talking, I thought about my own story in terms of when I made a decision to obtain my PhD, because I fought it, guys. I was like, no, 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 not me. I'm not gonna. No, I have my MBA. I was working in the newsroom. I was a television reporter. I always thought about getting my master's, but it wasn't until like I really understood a greater calling, because I felt like, wow, once I understood how I would leverage my PhD to
Yeah.
serve people. And so here I am now, a happiness scholar. So what got you there? I am so curious, because as you were talking, like, man, it sounds like such a powerful story. And I'm looking forward to finding out more.
It is, and it is a long story that I'm going to try to make as short as possible.
Isn't it always long? I gave the Cliff Notes version of mine.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to do that here. I mean, that the story started in childhood, and then I was derailed for quite some time. And so then I'll say it started in 2002, after a very soul-wrenching, soul-stealing divorce. I got my life back on track. And at 32, I decided to finish my education. And when I did this as a 32-year-old, very non-traditional student, I did it at a very traditional university. I went back because I live here in Atlanta, and I got admitted to Georgia State University. And it was the place for me immediately. Back in those days, it was very gritty. It's right in the middle of the city. It's huge. It's ruthless at times. Right now, I think there's 50,000 students or something. Back in those days, it was like 30,000. So just people and bodies just bustling around and, thugging it out, basically. And so I thought, yeah, I chose well. So when I went back to school, I had a conversation with myself. I said, that first marriage like stole your youth. And it is now time for you to do all the things that you were designed to do, with no limits, no matter how old you are. And of course, at 32, that's not old. But compared to the 22-year-olds and the 25-year-olds, I was the crypt keeper. I blended though. I looked just like they did. And so I did not, out my age until I was in light company. And so I went back as a traditional student. I risked it all. And it was an opportunity. I had gotten laid off from a job in human resources. And I just took that opportunity to just risk it all and go back full time. And I was living on severance pay and student loans and grants, Pell Grants, because, I was poor. And I had 2 little children at that time from that first marriage. Now they're grown men. Wow. And so I went back in 2002. I did it fast. I was like, you know what? I don't have any time to waste. I wasted my 20s. And so I decided, not only am I going to go back and I'm going to go all the way, but I spoke it out loud to somebody that I was going to do it with a 4.0. I'm like, why not? If you're going to do it, do it. So I graduated SUMA in 2004. Wow. And I went in 2006, I went right into a graduate program, a master's right after that. Met my current husband during the process of all of that. And so we got married the same year that I graduated with SUMA in 2006. And then by 2008, I was graduating with the master's. Now, I was supposed to go straight through to the doctorate. I actually applied and got into a doctorate at Georgia State, but immediately, like my first semester in, I regretted it. I was like, why am I here? Like, this is the same stuff I just did in the master's. These are the same people, same professors, same scholarship. I'm no longer interested in this. And so I wrote it out and then finally wrote that little letter, that says I'm withdrawing, from this program. And about that time, I was coming off a Teach for America gig. And I said, I think I can affect the greatest change at the higher education level, because this public school system stuff has way too many constraints, and it's way too repressive and oppressive for people like me. Even as a Teach for America teacher, maybe primarily as a Teach for America teacher, because, they've got their own issues. We can talk about that on another episode. And so I chose my current college because it was the very same population that I was serving as a high school teacher. Very same population. As a matter of fact, I ran into some former students right away. And I never looked back after that. So I chose to do that work, which is soul work. It is an endearing, complicated, complex population in Southwest Atlanta. But I love them to death. And so about 5 years into that, my husband was like, remember you were supposed to get that doctorate. Remember that? And and I was like, shame. He has called me out. Because I was gonna put it on the back burner, and we got pregnant with our 6th child.
Wow.
Because we have a blended family. So there's the 2 kids that I brought to the relationship. My husband had 2 kids from his previous marriage. So that was 4. And then we had 2 together.
Oh.
And it seemed like I kept graduating right after a baby or pregnant. I walked across the stage with my master's with a 4-week-old in the audience.
Wow.
Yes, my husband
That
and
is
parents
beautiful.
were carrying him around, and I'm trying to get this guy, this keynote speaker, the commencement speaker, to shut up and get on with it so I can get back to this baby. So that kept happening. And so we got pregnant with the last child. And I just kind of said, I guess I'm just supposed to be a career mom. And, this professor here at Atlanta Technical College. And that's when my husband put it in my ear again. He's like, no, that's not the end of your story. And so he caused me to get back in the game. And I wanted to be very purposeful, very intentional about the program I chose, because I already had, in my opinion, failed at the last attempt, because I wasn't interested in it and I dropped out. So I started to investigate a different school of thought. I had been an arts and sciences graduate twice. So I was like, I'm no longer interested in just, basically studying the works of dead white men any longer. I really am interested more in people and these adults that I serve and educate every day. And so I chose the College of Education at the University of Georgia. There, at that time, it was called the Adult Education Doctorate, designed in a fast track cohort model with action research as its methodology. And as I got accepted in the program and started the program, the name changed to the Learning, Leadership, and Organization Development Doctorate, Doctor of Education. And so I chose well. It is one of the best decisions I ever made. And I realized that on the very first day of the summer retreat. And I was like, yep, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is me living my purpose. And I didn't look back. I finished that thing in 3.5 years. My colleague and friend and I were the first to graduate from our cohort together. We sat side by side during commencement, and we were hooded by the same major professor.
Oh,
and so
fantastic.
That's how it happened for me. I got my doctorate at 49 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that's a part of my coaching platform, is that age is nothing but a number. If your brain still works, then you need to use it. And my brain is still working. Now I got a little ADD going on, which is why I do so many different things. I think it fulfills that attention deficit. But I encourage all my clients to stop, because a lot of the things that hold us back is our constraints that we designed ourselves. And the number one constraint is I'm too old.
It's interesting that
It's too late.
Yes, it's interesting that you say that. So, because when you said that, I said yes, because on the podcast, I talk about, I kind of talk about this quite a bit outside of talking about, all the different dynamics in terms of positive psychology and the value and of positive psychology is living your own timeline. Living
Absolutely.
your own timeline. And so what I love so much about your story, and as Dr. McCoy-Wilson is talking, I'm like, yes, again, yes. And I'm trying not to interrupt, but a part of me is like, oh my gosh, I resemble that, or I relate to that, or, and part of that is the fact that even within my own journey, because I have spent nearly 20 years of my life in television, in radio as a news director. I was at NPR affiliate station. I worked in major markets. My career as a television reporter started off in radio, which is one of the reasons why I love my podcast so much, because it speaks to levels of my core. But I actually started my doctoral program at 38, and I finished it at 42. And so when someone says to me, well, I feel old, or I'm too old, and I go, you have to live your own timeline. The time is right because it's your time.
Our society places too much emphasis on youth. I mean, a mother of 6 kids. And what I mean by that is that, life is only for the young. And after 30, y'all might as well roll over and die. That is so absurd, because the country is run by we old folk. Of course, there are lots of young people in boardrooms, but primarily the C-suite is a lot of old people. and I mean, and if you talk about government is run by what the kids would call like the crypt keepers, and just you just got one foot in the grave kind of people, because those folks are 20 and 30 years older than me, and I'm an old lady, in a lot of folks book.
Not to me at all. So
thank you. I just hide behind a youthful face. Thank God for that. So I can lead with, oh, I'm just one of you millennials. But then, once people get to know me, it comes out, all those grown kids show up. So they out me.
Well, what's so interesting is that I also think it was also a value. My fiance and I talk about this quite a bit, because one thing about him, one thing about the fact that we have in common, I should say, is that we share a very youthful mentality, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that is so super important. And I said it because my parents shared that. My mother died in 2016. My mother, she loved opera, and I grew up loving and admiring the theater. That's why, like, the theater is my happy place. I love musicals. And so people are like, oh yeah, here I am, 47 years old, and I can recite things with Frozen 1 and 2, or, Hamilton and Rent. And my favorite is Wicked, right? But I think I can say this, and I can say this with so much like energy, is because of the fact of valuing my youthfulness, opposed to assuming, hey, you shouldn't talk about Hello Kitty, almost 50 years old. But I do. I love her. She's a cat. But but despite all of those things, I think that the mentality can really fuel you. So your mindset fuels you. And so how does it fuel you in regards to the fact of living all of these different dynamics? Because I can go on and on in regards to not only the meaningful work that you have really been called to do, but then the fact of being a mother and a wife. And you just didn't say, you said a mother of six. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
People are so
wow.
amazed. I mean, I guess at some point every other day we're amazed that we did it. Because when we at some point had those four grown ones now, when they were little, when we had them all under one roof, and then the baby came, the baby who's now 13, we were like, what are we doing? We're just faking it until we make it. Lord help us. We just, and parents out there, just make it up as you go along. It's okay. You're just, just love your kids and do things that represent that love all the time, and they're going to be all right. Because people are freaking out about parenthood and messing up. You're going to mess up a lot. It's okay. But yeah, I don't really know how all of that happened. I mean, I had two kids when I met my husband. He had two kids. We put them together, and I was satisfied with that. I really didn't want any other kids. Like, I really didn't want any other kids. But, as fate would have it, I told my husband he secretly wanted us to have children together. And so I told him, you prayed this into being. these two really young Z's. I don't know what generation they're going to be called, a 13-year-old and a 7.5-year-old. But I said, you did this to me. But I am grateful and thankful for every single one of them. They are gifts. And I know people say that, parents say that, and people think that's so beautiful and trite. But I really do mean that. Looking back, our oldest is 26. So looking back over all of their lives and the things that they come back and say to us now, we did some good work. And it was just by the grace of God, a lot of it. But then some of it was very intentional. And so that's just a part of who I am. And I always knew that. Like, I'm a feminist. I was never one of those women who wanted to, a man to take care of her. And, once the kids start coming, I was going to stay at home. Absolutely not. I stayed at home with the oldest one for 2 years, kind of by default. And I about lost my mind. I really lost who I was at some point, because not that motherhood is something that shouldn't be revered, but it is not does not represent the fullness of me. I'm so many women. Like you said, I call myself a Renaissance woman. I'm sure that's probably very heady of me to say, but I am. I have so many interests and gifts, talents, and skills. And so, like, my academic beginnings started because I'm a writer. At some point I had a journalism minor. And I changed that because I said, you know what? I'm 32 starting this journey. Do what you want to do. That's another thing. Don't do stuff based on a job. Make choices based on purpose, and the money will come. And so I changed that minor to creative writing and ended up publishing a little handful of short stories. And I got that out of me. And I really don't think I want to write fiction anymore. But my study of literature and literary studies, that began because I'm a writer. Writers read, and then readers write, and vice versa. So then, of course, the teaching was a natural extension of that. I got a teaching fellow in graduate school, in my first graduate program as a master's student at GSU, and I taught rhetoric and intro to composition and all that stuff. Then, that interest in writing and literature is what got me my first true entry into higher education and leadership. I started as faculty. I was faculty of English and literature first. Then I became a department chair of that same area, and some social sciences as well. And then I told you about how the doctorate happened. And so once, and as a dean, I became a dean before the doctorate, only about 6 months before the doctorate. Praise God for the doctorate,
Wow.
because I had no leadership training. I was just a natural leader. I think leaders are born and not made. I think they're born and then they're cultivated. And so I was already a natural leader. So that's how I got that position. But I had no training. I needed that cultivation. So the doctorate came right away. I became dean in April of 2015. I entered that doctorate in May of 2016. So that then was my leadership, me honing those skills. And as a leader, if you're a good leader, you're coaching already. And so a part of the doctorate that I finished was a coaching certificate. And so it was just like the natural coaching was the natural heir to adult education. So all of these things fall into play. The puzzle pieces come together when you're following your bliss and your purpose. It'll all come together. And then you, as the individual, you have to realize that if you feel like more than one person, be more than one person. Nothing chains you to your role as, in your career. I'm Dean of Arts and Sciences in the one role, but there's so much more that I am. So then the executive coaching started. And again, and as I told you, I'm a writer. So I'm publishing stuff that I don't even have to publish. Like I'm not on a tenure, you don't have tenure at a 2-year college. So I'm not, a publish or perish doctorate, but I publish because it's in there, because I observe, because this is what I do. I do this for no pay, do the thing that you would do for no pay. And I do that all the time. And then I'm just lucky that somebody pays me. So all of these things just kind of fell together for me. And once I launched my business, my coaching business last year and my LLC, then all kinds of other opportunities started coming my way to do consulting. I basically, my doctorate, my dissertation study was really me consulting for the college. And so I did that for, 3 years. The study was about 15 months. So I learned how to consult on my own institution.
So one of the things that I love is that you talk about so many different dynamics, right? In terms of, and I love how you refer to it as being a Renaissance woman in regards to just embracing all of these different elements that you feel called to do from, your work in terms of your doctorate, your work as relates to really also the dynamics in regards to how you climbed in terms of academia, and now here in an executive leadership position as dean. Then on top of the fact that, well, hey, by the way, I'm published and I have I have some writing here or there, right? And then on the top of that, you are also have this incredible business. And so, it's I love how they all kind of piece, and I love how you refer to it as this puzzle. So how does it allow you to express your full potential? Because all of those different dynamics, I think, are wonderful because it gives a person permission to say, or really the permission to let go and say, you know what, I can go out there. I don't have to focus in on one lane. I can go and I can get on this highway and I can cross them, right?
Absolutely.
And it's okay.
And so I think of this quote that I read years ago in undergrad. Julia Alvarez is one of my favorite fiction writers. And she once said, as somebody was interviewing her and asking her something about the stories that she writes, and she says, the thing inside you is calling out to you. And if you don't answer it, the thing inside you will kill you. And it was, I loosely quote her, it was something like that. And that resonated with me, and I never forgot it, because there were so many things inside of me calling out to me. I've been writing and scribbling in little journals and stuff since I was 6 years old. And so I can't not write. When the writing gods visit me, I have to do that work, and I do it for free. And at first, now people are paying me. That's like, wow, that's awesome. You're going to pay me to do the stuff that I do for fun. That's my soul work. And so that's the thing that I wanted. I started that way to lead to this. Do stuff for free at first that you love to do on your job or jobs. I volunteered to lead lots of committees, in addition to the work that they just paid me to do. I volunteered to lead some committees that turned into like the college trusting me with that responsibility, in addition to the job description of Dean of Arts and Sciences. And that led to leveraging networks and opportunities, because I could say, well, I've been doing this for 3 years. Mm-hmm. Now, it wasn't, officially a part of my job description, but I became, for example, the professional development. Professional development was the dissertation study, basically. And so then I became the go-to person for professional development for the entire campus. One of the directors that they pay to do that work, she comes to me, we work together, on projects and initiatives. And so I'm not saying, start a coaching business and give it away. No, in order to build up a portfolio that can back your business, do some stuff for free, or just volunteer because you love doing it at one of your jobs or at your primary role. If you just have the one primary role, volunteer to do some stuff that you are highly skilled at, that they need someone to do, and don't complain about, they don't pay me to do this. Change your mindset. If your primary career doesn't pay you enough, develop some multiple streams of income. And the training ground for doing that is your primary career. In order for you to decide what multiple streams you're going to pursue, you need to have some experience. And you can develop experience doing things that you are talented enough to do in your current role that, underpays you, because the academics are always complaining, because most of my friends are academics, about how little their job pays them, how, faculty never get paid well enough, especially if you work for a state funded institution. That is always like a pain point. Well, you don't have to quit. If you love what you do and you love who you do it for, then just create some multiple streams of income.
And so I love what you shared in regards to the fact of kind of stepping out if you are deciding to kind of leverage all that because we live in a world now where we value so much in terms of knowledge, right? I think that's one of the reasons why I cannot stop watching anything on YouTube, because I just love going through YouTube and checking out every how-to video. And my fiance walking goes, are you still watching YouTube? And I am still watching YouTube.
It sucks you in.
It does. But what I love so much about it is that I love seeing people sharing their knowledge all over the world. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love my podcast so much, because, as I'm sitting here talking with you, our listeners represent all over the world, from the Netherlands to Australia, to Russia. And I think that's so beautiful to be able to connect in terms of being global citizens of the world and being able to share information. And what I love so much about what you're sharing is that, hey, it's okay when you're at the beginning and you're building your portfolio that you do things at no cost, right? That you do, free events, or you may go out and speak to a group, and there's not a speaking fee involved at the beginning, because at that time you're still building your portfolio. And what I love about what you shared, that Dr. Now I'm going to call you Dr. Sonya. Doctor.
That's cool.
It's the fact that you said it's okay to start dynamics of it at work. to start thinking about how you're going to leverage your work experience to be able to kind of grow or build into what you feel called to do.
Mhm.
Right. And for some of us, it may be staying on that job. And
Yeah.
for some of us, it may be leaving that position to
Mhm.
continue to do other work outside of it. And
Mhm.
so I love that you talked about the whole leveraging dynamic of where you are. And I
Yeah.
think that says so much. So I'm also so curious for those who are listening, who are saying, okay, wow, well, I'm loving hearing these two talk about doctorate. I love hearing them talking about how she's leveraged her doctorate. What do you say to a person who is listening, who, like yourself and myself, right? I started my PhD program at the University of Florida, a very rigorous program at 38. And I do have some funny stories to share with people, like, that they would take me out and it was like, she doesn't even look her age. So I
Mhm.
related to when you said, when you shared that, right? But what
Uh-huh.
do you say to that person who's listening and saying, I'm thinking about my doctorate, but I'm not sure what steps to take.
Well, like I said, I was very intentional about um, doing it, starting over in a doctoral program after that failed first attempt. It took me, and it shouldn't have taken me this long. I was doing a whole lot of kind of imposter syndromes, bad negative self-talk. That's why it took me 3 years to find the right program for me. And it could have taken a little less time because I kept talking myself out of stuff. And so the first thing that you need to do is decide your purpose. I have talked to so many folks, coached so many folks on that precipice, and they want to get a doctorate for all the wrong reasons. That that is not going to serve you well. You have to really want this for the right reason or reasons. It is not for the faint at heart. It is not for the weak. It is not for people who don't love this. So you got to first decide, what am I here to do on this earth? Why am I here? And what am I going to do about it? And so once you answer that question, then you can decide if you are even supposed to pursue a doctorate at all. And if you are, if this is, something, like I said, Julia Alvarez said, that has been calling you, it's in there and it needs to come out, then the first thing you need to do is find a program that matches your purpose. And that's going to take a lot of research. It shouldn't take 3 years. Like I fell off the wagon a few times.
But it's okay if it does, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
okay.
it's okay. It took me 10
But
years
but
for
don't
my
let your
master's, thinking about my master's.
wow. But
Yeah.
don't let like negative self-talk be the thing that derails you.
Exactly.
So the internet is a beautiful thing. You can find out everything you want to know about every university in the world on the web. And so once you've found a program, or you're probably gonna find a few programs that match your purpose, then you need to whittle it down. You don't need to apply to every doctoral program. I wouldn't advise applying for more than 3, because the application at 3 at the same time. The application process is grueling, and you want to be selective. And so rankings matter. I got all my degrees from large Research One institutions, state funded universities. I appreciate those kinds of institutions, and they're affordable. I wouldn't have been able to go to a private, sleepy liberal arts university. I wouldn't have been able to afford it. I was a marginalized student. Not so much as a doctoral student, but still, So look for rankings, those matter. Examine the program thoroughly and try to find graduates of the program to interview. or, have a casual conversation with. Sometimes that's difficult unless you know some people who graduated from these programs. When the setting that I was in, everybody around me was an academic with a doctorate. So it was easy. And the University of Georgia in the state of Georgia is either number 1 or number 2 in the state. So everybody knows somebody from Georgia. And I was surrounded by people who had doctorates from Georgia, actually in the same program that I was courting. So I talked to them and I knew them. So I knew their impact. I knew the result of that program and how it impacted their lives and all the people that they were leading. And so based on that, they were a representation of the product of the program. So I still went to those people and talked to them and decided to only apply to one program. I put all my eggs in one basket. I was still doing some imposter syndrome stuff. So, so that might be part of the reason why I put all my eggs in that basket, because I was like, well, I'll throw it out there if they accept me. Cool. If they don't, I'll try to get next year with somebody else. So, and the last thing that I would say is also, I am beholding to cohort structured programs. And the reason for that is, and I might step on some toes of some dissertation coaches. The need for dissertation coaches is because the program that these doctoral students are in does not fully tend to their needs. And that's why dissertation coaches are getting wealthy, because the program isn't set up properly enough to connect those students and to give them an inborn support system. And that's what cohort models do. And I'm a product of that. We only got through that program because we were a tight knit, together we stand, divided we fall kind of situation. The last of our cohort, we are making her graduate in the spring. We're like, okay, girl, what you doing? What you doing with your life? You defended your prospectus, what, a year and a half ago? Come on, what you doing?
I love that. Well, it's interesting because my cohort was probably, I think we were quite a few of us. We were like about 20, maybe 21 of us. And, as I look back on it in terms of my doctoral experience, in terms of my PhD program, I talk about her often. Like in the classroom, I talk about her. My dad just published a book. He goes, "Hey, by the way, your dissertation chair is in my book." It's like, I'm like, she surrounds my home when I go to conferences where there's other University of Florida people. She's highly discussed. Before when she retired, I was like actually the last of the people that had an opportunity to work with her, because she retired really soon after I completed my PhD. And I will say that she was just so instrumental in regards to my journey. And her name is Dr. Julie Dodd. And, and so I have her. She's so instrumental to me, Dr. Sonya, that her letters that she sends to me are framed.
I feel you on that.
When she emails me, I feel like it is like a message from above. I read it like I'm studying a book, and she's probably listening right now because she's so supportive. But it was Dr. Julie Dodd and our associate dean, Dr. Debbie Treacy, these powerful women in these leadership positions that really helped me throughout my program, as well as my dissertation committee, which was filled with so many wonderful, wonderful people, and one of which happens to have written a book called Make Your Job a Calling. He comes out of the world of, he's the one that taught me all things positive psychology.
What's his name?
His name is Dr. Ryan Duffy. And
Mhm.
so as you're talking, I'm like, this is really wonderful because it speaks to the value of the cohort and the people that make up your committee and how important they are in terms of that and what that can look like as relates to your success. And
Those
so,
people changed my life.
yes.
I mean, transformed. Transformative learning is one of my theoretical frames. So, but absolutely, Dr. Karen Watkins, a genius of a woman, an itty bitty little woman in stature, but she is a powerhouse. She is the most brilliant human I have ever had a chance to be in the room with, and needless to say, be guided by. And she's not pretentious anyway, just so unassuming. But talk to her for 5 minutes and you understand that she's a genius. I mean, her CV is the length of my dissertation. And so much of it is it's full-length books. She's amazing. She's a mentor. And I think about when you were talking about the women, the powerhouse of women that you were had the pleasure of working with. My program was led primarily by women. Like the entire program. There was
Wow.
one new kind of assistant professor that they were, I think he had just come off a clinical track and they were just kind of grooming him. And I had one class with him, but everybody else was a woman, and just phenomenal women to be surrounded by. Women that that groomed me, that watered my flowers, kind of women, and not women that caused harm. You know, these were the kind of women that should be in leadership roles, leading people, and specifically leading other women. And I just my steps were ordered. You know,
Yes.
like all of these horror stories that you hear from doctoral students or people who just dissertated and how horrible, you know, they made it through the war, you know. I mean, yeah, we all felt weathered by the end, especially when you do it that fast. You know, when you do it in 3.5 years, you feel like, did this just happen? I'm getting hooded. Like, how did all of this happen? So you feel like that, but I felt so nurtured and felt so cared for. And I don't mean that in a sappy way. Like, people weren't, you know, patting me on the back constantly. You know, I had people give me some real talk. Be like, you know, you haven't done anything this semester towards your dissertation. You better get your life right. You are not graduating in the 3 years if you don't make a move. You know, those kinds of real conversations. Or, you know, I submitted a very mediocre paper, and I knew it was mediocre when I submitted it because I had a problem with the assignment. I was like, look, I'm knee deep in my study. Why this has nothing to do with my study, but I was going to make it have something to do with my study. So I basically submitted the paper I wanted to submit. And she gave me a C- and told me, you got two choices. You either rewrite this or you do something else to fulfill this requirement, because you're not going to pass this class. I was like, oh, okay. That's not acceptable for me, you know, as a doctoral student. I'm not repeating anything. But she gave me some real talk that I needed.
Well, see, and
But
that's important throughout the process, right? Is
Mhm.
having people that really are supporting you, that are really about helping you achieve and continue to elevate as it
Mhm.
relates to that. And so I love that. And it's interesting because as you were sharing, I thought to myself, wow, you know, it speaks so much in terms of the importance of choosing a program too that really speaks to you, that you know you're excited about. As I when I coach people through, or informally coach, I should say that, because you know my work is dealing with well-being and positive psychology. But when I speak to people who are interested and obtaining a doctorate, I always advise them that you want to look for programs where you're excited about working with the faculty, that you can talk about their research, because I to this day I'm like, wow, I can't believe I was at the University of Florida and I had a chance to work with this person and that scholar, and now that person might be on my committee. And as I just finished telling you about the incredible scholar that really introduced me to all things positive psychology and changed my life. And, so it's so important to be able to make sure that you're doing that. And it's interesting that when you shared that, because I thought about a brief story of when I was in the process of choosing my doctoral programs, and I was calling them up, and I remember getting a call from the associate dean, and that's Dr. Debbie Tracy. And she says to me, I'm so sorry that I wasn't able to call you back sooner. I was taking a student, I believe she was taking a student to chemotherapy
Wow.
treatment. And, I often told her this when I was in the program, because I got accepted to the University of Georgia, and I was going to go to the university, and they had spent a year and spent some time recruiting, but it honestly was that conversation that made, I said, wow, she has a heart. And I say that because my mother died literally a month after I graduated from the PhD program.
Oh, wow.
And so I was dealing with, a very sick parent.
Mm.
And so my heart said, you belong there, even though I was excited about University of Georgia. And it's such a wonderful program. But, I chose my program based on ranking. Yeah. Because I was like, wow, my program is, one of the top in the country. I couldn't help but to say, wow, this is wonderful. And both of them were. But, I will say it was how she responded to that call changed everything. So what do you say to people? Because I can talk to you all day.
And so can I. I'm a talker too. And when I'm passionate about stuff, it's just a whole 4 hours later.
I told Dr. Sonya this. I'm like, I'm so sorry. As I got onto the Zoom call, I said, I'm a talker, so I'm sorry that I'm a little late here. But and I think she can seize it. She sees it now, right? But how would you direct a person in regards to making that decision for a program, especially if you're thinking about because I did something very unique. Sometimes I call myself a unicorn, because I was a part of a journalism doctoral program and a PhD program for journalism and communication. But I'm not a communication scholar. I'm a scholar in happiness and positive psychology. So I consider myself a little bit unique in terms of that. So how do you instruct a person who's listening right now and saying, okay, how do I choose that program that's right for me?
Well, and as I hear you saying, very similar to me, you've kind of diversified your skill set. That is a plus and not like a deficit. So many times scholars are one-trick ponies. They have this itty bitty, very focused specialization that they stay buried in some old archival library their entire lives. If that's not who you are, if you have all these different things that you're good at, for lack of a better term, or that you're passionate about, that you feel are your calling, you need to find a program that speaks to that. You need to, and you need to go with your gut and your heart. I think they're one and the same. If you keep coming back to it, like when you're doing your research and you have this, major little lists or charts or whatever, and you keep going to that website, like, every word on the website, all the people, the whole curriculum, you're in love, you're falling in love with that program. Go where your heart is, go where your bliss is, go with your gut, the thing that you're thinking about when you wake up in the morning, and showering, the thing that you think about when you're drifting off to sleep, when you're in some yet another boring meeting and you start getting on your phone and looking at stuff, the thing that keeps pulling you, that you keep gravitating towards, that's it. That's not an accident. That's the universe telling you what to do, directing your steps. Don't ignore that. So that's what I would say.
I love it. I love it. And so I want to ask you a couple of more questions. And I hate this because this is the part where I start wrapping up. And I say I hate this because as I'm sitting here talking to Dr. Sonya, I was like, yes. And I'm also really relating to so many elements of your journey. And I'm so excited to be able to share this with the Kourting Happiness audience. So tell us a little bit about your executive coaching in terms of your company, because if I know listeners are like me right now saying, wow, I'm enjoying listening to her and talking, because I'm enjoying talking to you so much. I would love to let them know a little bit more about your company and where they can find you.
Yes. So I'm physically located in Atlanta, Georgia. However, I can serve clients globally, really. Thank God for Zoom. And during 2020, I moved primarily to Zoom, and we realized that we could do so much coaching virtually. And so my website is SonyaMcCoy-Wilson.com. And you can find out so much more about what I do, but I will tell you here, I am a change leader. So change comes in so many different forms: individual change, group change, organizational change. And so I've done all three of those with clients. But primarily, I cater to a lot of individual clients, executive clients, or people that are in middle management levels that want to move to the next level, people who are contemplating the meaning of their lives and they want to make a big change. They want to open a business. They want to go back to school and start applying for a doctorate or a master's program, or they want to do all that stuff at the same time. I've helped all those types of people to find their purpose. And now what are you going to do about it? So I help people get from here to there. And then at the group and organization level, I'm planning to do some workshops in 2022 on change and something that it was coined by some other scholars called the immunity to change workshop. So that thing that you've been trying to change for years and years and years, and basically you're standing in your own way. And it could be all kinds of things. And there's some very specific tools and specific kind of reflective work that people can do to make those changes. And then at the organization level, that's about a whole lot of assessing, problem framing and assessing, and then creating a whole plan, a whole change plan, change management plan, implementation plan. So I offer all of those types of services. I make sure that people know I'm not a life coach. I'm not a psychologist. Change is my framework. So if you are trying to change anything about you or anything about your future, career paths, etc., I'm the person that you need. I'm the coach that you need.
You are certainly the coach that we need. And I am so glad that you are here. We're going to also have Dr. Sonya's information on our website, so you can check it out on the episode page of this podcast. But before we go, this is the question that we ask every guest on the Kourting Happiness podcast. And that is the value of committing to your well-being, a value of committing to your happiness. How do you go about committing? What do you do to commit to your well-being?
That is so important. because if your mind and body are suffering, you're not going to be able to do anything productive. And if you are married, or if you have a village of people around you, you're going to have to invest them in your self-care regimen. Because mostly, and we as Black women, we are always nurturing everybody else and serving everybody else. And it's almost shameful for us to focus on ourselves. Hopefully gone is that rhetoric. Hopefully we have tossed that out. I think 2020 made a lot of people take stock of their lives. And so if you have a village of people around you, you have to invest them. You have to let them know, look, I am struggling, and you need to create a list of the things you need. And it doesn't mean, oh, you have to give me this. It means you need to back off so I can give me this. If you need, I'm a person who needs some solitary time every day. And you heard how many children we have running around all the time. And the grown ones are worse than the little ones, all the text messages. I put some stuff in place just last year because they were just, pulling at me in every direction. The mornings are mine. I get up very early, mostly because I have to, and it became like training for me over the years, always taking somebody to school. And so, I am up at 5 o'clock in the morning. After I drop everybody off, between the hours of, say, 7 really and 10 a.m., those belong to me to do whatever I need to do. If it's just drink coffee and listen to NPR, that's what I'm doing. I told you I'm always writing. Sometimes that's my writing work. It's my, because I'm working on some consulting projects right now, and it's a lot of writing. That's the time that I write. So I need quiet time. I'm not a big, go to the salon type of person. But if you are, like, if you want to spend the day at a salon, you need to carve out that time for you. And it's okay. And budget the money to do it. And get those other people on board in your life. If eating and lifestyle changes are what you need to do, you need to let the family know. This is how we live in. This is the new grocery list. I'm gonna keep you with your, unhealthy snacks, but this right here, this is my pantry. This is mom's closet or whatever, but you have to be very intentional and direct with your village to let them know that I'm important and this is what I need. Maybe I have a foodie friend. I'm a foodie too. And so most of my friends are foodies, who said that she likes to go to a restaurant every month alone because she has 2 little ones. And she told her husband, yep, I'm going to a restaurant every month. And once a year, she goes alone to like a hotel for the weekend because she needs to get away from her whole home. Now, that's not me, but that she loves that. And after that weekend away, she's so refreshed. She can now serve everybody's needs. And so self-care is so important. Another thing that I did was I started making myself, and this is my husband's idea, unplug after a certain time every night. So I have my notifications, all notifications. That's phone calls, emails, social media, everything goes dark after 9 p.m. They are off. So no, they don't pop up, nothing. Like everything just goes into the silent world after 9. And my friends and my tribe, they know. It's like, did you text me back? I'm like, when did you text me? Oh, I forgot. Yeah, it was like 10:30. And everybody's got jokes, but it has really protected my peace to just shut that stuff off. And so find these things, find what makes you insane. Identify the things that are destroying your peace and that are making you crazy, that are making you unhealthy. because health starts on the inside, and you need to find some strategies to solve those problems and invest the people who love you.
You know, I am so grateful that you invested your time today with us. Dr. Sonya McCoy-Wilson. I don't even want to say goodbye, but this is not goodbye. I think, this is just the beginning. And I am so grateful that you shared so much powerful information in terms of getting your village together as relates to your self-care and your well-being. And I'm so grateful that you're a part of this village. And I'm so grateful that you shared your expertise with us today. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And I would love to come back anytime.
You can learn more about where to find Dr. Sonya McCoy-Wilson by visiting her episode page on the Kourting Happiness podcast website at drcourtnealston.com/podcast/episode 55. Let's continue this conversation online. Email us at podcast@drcourtnealston.com. That's podcast@drcourtnialston.com. Join us on Instagram at Kourting Happiness. Don't forget, that's courting with a K. Also, I hope you join our private Facebook community. You can find us at Kourting Happiness Podcast Community. Our private Facebook group is a safe haven to share, meet more people looking to build positive relationships, focus on well-being, and create a happier life. Now, are you ready to spread happiness? We hope you subscribe and share this podcast with your family, friends, coworkers, and all the important people in your world. We release a new episode every Thursday. Congratulations on your continued commitment to your Kourting Happiness journey. Thank you so much for listening. We want you to be well, be happier, and be kinder to yourself. We can't wait to see you next week.